Hi, everyone. I'm Devika Kewalramani. I'm a lawyer practicing in New York in the US. And my area of practice is legal ethics. I represent and advise lawyers and law firms and legal departments of corporations on a variety of ethics and professional responsibility matters. It's true, it is a fairly unique practice. And I started it and grew it in a fairly unique way as well within my law firm. It seemed essential to building this practice uh, that I have a concrete set of skills and basis in knowledge in order to advise other lawyers and other law firms and lawyers who are in-house. And that required a significant amount of research and study, uh, attending conferences and participating in them, writing articles, but also on a more personal level, interacting with law firm leaders, trying to understand what are their ethics needs. And of course, with other ethics professionals who, like me, there are others who do this kind of work in New York and in the US, to understand what kinds of issues that they help other law firms with. So that's one piece of it, building a skill set and a knowledge base. But the other very essential piece of it is understanding the client's needs here. Um, these ethics problems are usually very sensitive and delicate matters, requiring great trust when the lawyers are going outside to seek advice. And keep in mind, the clients I have are essentially professional peers. They're other lawyers. They're lawyers at other law firms just like me. Uh, what would make them seek out and get independent and objective advice, right? They'd have to come to somebody who they trust. Now, corporate lawyers, just to take an example, often turn to intellectual property attorneys for certain advice that they need in a particular client matter. Similarly, litigators might be reaching out to bankruptcy lawyers if there are issues they see. Now, all lawyers at some point or another in their professional careers have ethics questions, even if they don't have ethics problems. And they would reach out to other lawyers, right? So it's the kind of advice that all lawyers would require, whether they're litigators or they have more of an advisory practice doing transactional work. One thing I noticed as I was starting this practice and growing it is that there was a gap I found in terms of ethics resources. You know, who's the go-to ethics person I can feel comfortable with for mid-size and smaller law firms. Many of the global law firms and larger international firms have and have had over the years their own internal general counsel or someone filling that role who's designated to advise their internal lawyers on those issues. But smaller and mid-sized firms didn't always have those resources. So the idea was to sort of develop a business plan and strategy to sort of take all of this into account and focus not so much on what my ethics practice would look like, but more on what is it that law firms and lawyers need in terms of ethics advice, and what are the particular kinds of issues that are coming up today that need to be dealt with so that those problems don't turn into something bigger. So for me, it was more taking a passion and turning it into a real practice. And of course, a lot of hard work, just like any other lawyer trying to build and grow a practice. And take a giant leap of faith, because when you start something, you don't know how it's going to turn out. What you can really do is understand the client's needs and do great work. the biggest challenge is creating a space, and creating a space for a woman lawyer, creating a space for a lawyer who is from a different part of the world. Those are harder challenges. And because there is a small group of people who do this, and how do you find a space within that small space, which is a niche practice? Um, I have to say that I was very fortunate. I did not know what those challenges could look like. I was aware that I would have to face them, but I found a great openness and um, a, 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 a lot of appreciation, and for someone trying to start something new within within this sort of a narrow practice area in a city like New York, where there are so many lawyers and lawyers who have terrific practices. But I felt it was a very welcoming environment. And I felt that there was room for me to grow it and to build it. And so it really was up to me what I wanted to do with it. So there was a lot of energy I felt getting into it, both within my firm, who strongly encouraged me and greatly supported me to take this to wherever I wanted to take it to. And it takes time and a lot of effort, just like any other practice would take. But because this is so focused on one industry, it is in some ways easier and some ways harder, I think. Um, the fact that lawyers can have questions answered, questions that relate to something small and minor now, to avoid that same question turning into an issue and an ethics problem later on that could fester, uh, is something every lawyer and law firm wants to avoid. So there's that problem solving aspect to the ethics work, because it's really about, do I have a problem and how do I solve it before it becomes sticky and problematic. One of the other ways in which I think I was able to overcome those challenges we discussed earlier is that I already had experience at a law firm practicing, doing transactional work. So I was aware of the different types of practices that exist in a law firm, and mine is a multidisciplinary mid-sized firm. So I could see the kinds of professional responsibility and ethics issues that arise day to day for lawyers. And so my familiarity with the environment of a law firm, producing client work, how a law firm operates, how client relationships are built, was all helpful in building this practice, because I was not giving ethics advice by sort of looking up a book of rules in a vacuum and giving sort of some formulaic kind of advice, without actually taking a practical look at how to solve the problems and then put some preventive and remedial steps in place. And ultimately, I think in terms of overcoming challenges and building a practice, it's all about remaining relevant, offering value, and providing solutions. And I think those are the kinds of attributes that lead to an ethics lawyer and any lawyer being able to have a vibrant practice and making sure clients are coming to them and are happy with them. Of course, remaining engaged through writing ethics articles and being participating in conferences and being involved in bar association activity is key. That engagement is really critical as well. I really wanted to be a resource to other lawyers and to defend them and be a lawyer's lawyer. There are such difficult ethics problems that law firms encounter in everyday practice, regardless of the area they're in. There are huge risks, and the rule violations can be devastating, and in some instances, not alterable. Um, and there are very interesting and fascinating dilemmas that arise in law practice. Um, and I'll just give you a few examples. There are not always clear answers, and they're very fact specific as well. But for example, there's a duty of confidentiality, but at the same time, there is a duty of candor and truthfulness. Uh, Lawyers need to be advocates for their clients, but at the same time, they are officers of the court, and they cannot go beyond the purview of the law. If, let's say, the client wants to do something that may be in some ways unlawful. Similarly, a lawyer has the right to move and be autonomous, go from one law firm to another. But clients have a right to choice of counsel. They do not have to stay with the same lawyer if that lawyer chooses to leave law firm A and go to law firm B. So these are the kinds of complex dilemmas that lawyers face, that they need to deal with and comply with our rules, right? In addition to that, we're still talking about why I'm interested in this area. There are so many complexities from other facets of the relationships lawyers have. So there are these multiple interlocking responsibilities that arise from the lawyer's transactional work or litigation work, or if they're advisors to individuals. These involve duties to clients, clearly, in many instances to the court and the administration of justice, opposing counsel, adverse parties, their own law firm, and their colleagues, their seniors and their juniors. And the disciplinary implications, should something go radically wrong, are stupendous. Beyond the disciplinary implications for professional misconduct, there are risks of malpractice that clients can raise, disqualification due to, say, a conflict of interest in a court matter or otherwise, loss of a client because the client is dissatisfied with what happens, and if the professional conduct somehow impacts the work, fee forfeiture, but perhaps most important of all, the loss or damage to the lawyer's reputation, which the lawyer may have spent years and years cultivating. So my interest in this area is essentially because of how ethics plays such a dominant role in the lawyer's practice of law. It's really critical. And crossing the line is really not an option for lawyers at law firms.